Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another election prediction. This time we're going to be doing the 2024 Democratic primary. So, yeah, some polls have RFK Jr. at like the 20% range, but mostly on average it's like at like 15% or so. So he'll still be like getting a decent amount of delegates, while Williamson, she's clearly in third. She's like around 5% on average in some polls, even have her as low as like 3 or 2%. She has pretty much lost any sort of momentum she used to have when she was up at 8%. But clearly, Biden's extremely favored to win pretty much every single state in the Democratic primary. There's only a handful where RFK Jr. has a somewhat decent shot at winning, and I'll get into that in the video. But to start off with, the Democratic primary now, it starts with South Carolina as the first state to vote, then New Hampshire and Nevada at the same time. Then we have Georgia, and then we have Michigan, and then they just do the first Super Tuesday. So we're going to start off with the first state, Georgia. This is a very favored state for Joe Biden, but the good thing for RFK Jr. is it's an open primary state, so independents can vote here, or yeah, independents can vote in open primaries. So it's possible that some Republicans change their party registration just to vote for RFK Jr. in the primary. And we could probably honestly see that because it's looking like the Republican primary isn't going to be as competitive as it used to be earlier on. But for now, I think Williamson, she does pretty bad in Georgia, probably only gets like 3% of the vote, while RFK Jr., I could see him getting like 18% of the vote while Biden gets the rest. Again, it really comes down to black voters in Georgia, and I just don't see RFK Jr. doing amazing with them. I think RFK Jr. only gets 18% because nationally he's around 15, and there'll be some Republicans or right-leaning independents voting the primary for him because it is an open primary system. So he'll get some delegates out of this state. But Williamson, since she did not reach 15% and likely didn't reach 15% in any of the congressional districts in Georgia, those 4 delegates are gone, and probably 3 out of the 4 of them will go to Joe Biden, while the last one would go to RFK Jr. to readjust them. So Williamson already at 0 delegates to start with the first state, but Biden's very favored in Georgia. New Hampshire. This is the state that Williamson has the pretty much the best odds at actually getting some delegates. But again, the polling typically has her pretty much in the high single digits, not really enough to get enough delegates, so she'll probably only finish off with like 8% of the vote, if that. RFK Jr., I think he would definitely, he'll start out at 16%. Let me just see if this is an open primary state. Open to unaffiliated voters. So that actually might hurt him a bit because it isn't like fully super open with the Republican voters. Maybe you could change your registration to independent the same day, possibly, but at the same time, he'll probably finish off with about 16% of the vote. So Biden will get the rest of the vote, 75%. Williamson's 2 delegates will be divided up pretty much equally between Biden and RFK Jr., so 19-5. Nevada holding the primary the same day as New Hampshire. Again, I could see, let's take a look. It's a closed primary state. Not that good for RFK Jr. That means independents can't even vote. This is a state that I think he'll struggle to get to 16% or 15%, that threshold, but I think he'll pull it off just with about 16% of the vote. Williamson, again, should probably get a little bit lower than her New Hampshire total. Biden gets the rest. Again, Williamson does not hit 15% in the state, so her 2 delegates are just gone, probably equally divided between Biden and RFK Jr. Okay, so Biden's getting a sizable delegate lead in RFK Jr. at this point. This is why it really hurts him that Georgia is the first state to vote. RFK Jr.'s real path is he needs to win in Nevada, but right now it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Michigan. Again, Williamson should probably only crack like 5% if she's lucky here. RFK Jr., I think he'll have a bit of an easier time. Let me just check if it's an open primary state. It is. I actually think he'll do quite decently. I think he'll do a bit better than the previous states here. He'll probably get in the 20% range, while Biden gets the rest of the delegates. And Williamson, again, since she didn't reach 15%, 0 delegates. So Biden gets a lion's share here, proportionally, while RFK Jr. gets the remaining 2. So at this point, I could see Williamson dropping out of the race. She realizes there really isn't a great path for her to really win in the future. So, yeah, again, it's just pretty hard for her to make it through. And I forgot to fill in South Carolina. I think I got it confused with Georgia on the map. But the real order would be South Carolina, then New Hampshire, Nevada, Georgia, and Michigan. But again, Georgia and South Carolina would probably be the same case here because, again, they're both open primaries. I kind of expect them to pretty much vote the same here. So, again, Williamson wouldn't get enough delegates. We just do the same totals I did for Georgia because I accidentally misclicked on both the states. But again, it would probably boil down to something like this. The same pretty much margins are quite similar in primaries. Both have a similar amount of black voters. So again, they'd probably vote pretty similarly here. So Biden gets a win in Georgia. He wins the first 5 primaries, which is pretty bad for RFK Jr. But let's head to the Super Tuesday states. So again, RFK Jr., I think he would get at least 15% in Vermont. Massachusetts, I think it's an open primary state. He would do a bit better. Open primary states, he has a lot better of a chance here. It's open unaffiliated voters. Okay. But still, the best primary states for him are the open primary ones, because again, that allows independents to really vote for him. I could see him doing a bit better in Maine. Alabama, again, Biden, I think, would really crush it with African American voters. RFK Jr. only gets so much delegates because, again, it's an open primary. I could see him doing worse in Tennessee because, oh, it's still partially open. So let me just bump that up a little bit for RFK Jr. Again, North Carolina, I think, would pretty much vote for Joe Biden by quite a bit. Let me just check. It's partially closed. It's pretty bad for RFK Jr., so I think he would just barely get some delegates out of it. Virginia, it's an open primary. That's better for RFK Jr. So you would get into like the high teens here. About 19%, I would say he would get. Arkansas, again, it's an open primary state. I could see him doing a bit better with Republican voters here. It's typically a more right-wing state. There's more chances for him to do better with independents and Republicans in Arkansas that could cross over and vote in the Democratic primary. Oklahoma. These are one of the states I could see him doing a bit better in because, again, Oklahoma is a lot more of a conservative state, even in terms of the Democratic primary. It's kind of similar in West Virginia in that regard. But still, I see him just getting around 24% of the vote. It's probably one of his better states. Texas, it's an open primary state, again, but it's a lot larger too. So it'll cost a lot more money to run a campaign here, but I could see him just narrowly getting over the threshold. Minnesota, open primary, I could see him doing a bit better with more anti-establishment voters, but still not enough. Colorado, let's take a look. Open unaffiliateds. Again, I could see him doing a tiny bit better here, but it is a bit more of a liberal state, and RFK Jr. tends to be a lot more center-right. Utah, I could see him breaking about 20% or so. And then we get to California, and that's partially closed, I'm pretty sure, even though it says top 2 on here. It's partially closed in the primaries. But independents could still somewhat vote here. But again, it's a larger state. It would cost more money to run a campaign here. So I think RFK Jr. would only barely get to 15%. So I think we covered all the Super Tuesday states. At this point, I think it's fairly likely that RFK Jr. will be like, okay, I won 0 states so far. What's the point in keep running? I can see only a few avenues here. RFK Jr. could hopefully get a win in like North Dakota or something because it's a caucus, or a win in West Virginia. Why I specifically mentioned West Virginia. In the 2012 Democratic primary, Obama only got 59% of the vote in West Virginia. He actually nearly lost the state to a random person who's pretty much, I'm pretty sure he ran from president in prison, basically. But then again, I really just don't really think that RFK Jr. will stick around this long because West Virginia typically happens in May, their primaries. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that North Dakota and West Virginia did happen, or he stayed in the race long enough to get to both of these states. RFK Jr., he would probably get like 42% of the vote in a scenario like that. And in North Dakota, I could also see him doing a bit better in a caucus, 42%. But nowhere near enough to really win this state. But if he would wanted to really stay this long in, those two states are his best bets at winning one. But for the rest of these states, I think RFK Jr. would drop out after Super Tuesday. He would realize there really isn't a path forward for him to win, and he would just throw in the towel because it actually costs quite a bit of money to run a campaign. And if you're running a losing one, why bother even running? So let me just fill in the rest of the states where Joe Biden, he would pretty much get 100% of the delegates. In West Virginia, even if he drops out, I could still see him getting a decent amount of support. A bit lower than 42% it would probably go, but it's usually a protest vote state. But for the rest of these states, I just see Biden getting 100% of the delegates because then again, RFK Jr. wouldn't have any momentum going into this. So it's going to be a pretty boring Democratic primary overall. I really think the Republican primary would be more interesting to watch than this one. But RFK Jr. still gets like 300 or so delegates because, again, nationwide, he does have a good amount of built-in support overall. But again, Biden's probably going to easily win the primary. So if you liked this video, please, I would recommend subscribing to the channel. If you disagree with the outcome of this video, leave it in the comments down below. Or do you think you agree with the outcome? Even that is fine to comment down below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.